Bonjour, mon nom est Jaime Black-Morsette. So I'm a visual artist, but I also do performance art and installation art. I'm really interested in process, kind of how we get to a work of art and not just the finished product of the work of art. And so a lot of the work here for the show, She Holds Ground, is really about process. I mean, I've always kind of been a writer as well as a visual artist. So I've been interested in writing, and so I'm kind of just, you know, coming at the same experiences, the same things from many different artistic angles. And I think that the show is definitely, you know, shows that. It's like tactile, it's like the undoing of the threads of the history of the sash, right? But then it's also thinking about that same concept through writing and words and poetry and just expressing things through that way as well. I feel like doing this work of undoing this sash had a really meditative effect on me, and it just like gave me time to think through, like, you know, what does it mean to go back to our ancestors? Who are my ancestors? Like, and that's not always easy work. Like, there's a lot of family trauma there. There's a lot of colonial trauma. There's all kinds of different things to like unearth there. And so this just kind of gives you time to contemplate what it meant to, like, you know, weave together those histories, and what does it mean to undo those and like really, you know, understand. I feel like I got a really understanding of how this was made by unmaking it, which was kind of powerful. But in this particular sash, and the red ones in general, the red threads are the ones that hold everything together. And so I really did start thinking, and I use the color red quite a lot, in that like kind of showing that tie between us, you know, between our ancestors, between our family line and our histories. And so I think of those red threads as like, as our ancestors that, you know, were able to like hold, they kept all these threads together. And like all these threads on the wall over here is also like the like sort of warp threads, and they're also red, and that's what like is holding everything together. And so I think of that as like the ancestors holding us together. I guess like this work is really about kind of looking into my ties to my Métis history and my grandfather and my family. My grandfather Morissette was a really important person in my life, and he's passed on quite a few years ago, and I named my son Joe after him. So I'm really thinking about kind of really becoming the carrier of what, you know, he meant to me, like, and keeping and protecting the things about him that were important to us as a family, and passing those on to my son. So, you know, my artwork and my life kind of like all are really kind of connected in that way, and looking through that family history and kind of like bringing it back and looking through it and just kind of pulling out what's important and relearning a lot of our history as well. I spend a lot of time walking around the city, and I spend a lot of time by the river. And like, as I'm looking through these histories, I actually just found out yesterday that my grandfather was born here, and he lived in Thunder Bay my whole life. So I didn't know that he was born here in Winnipeg. So there's like a long history of my family being on this land. And so I really get a lot of strength and power of like it, because, you know, I'm thinking about like literally walking in the same footsteps as like they did, and not even knowing it for so many years, and then all of a sudden kind of realizing, wow, this show is called She Holds Ground, right? And so it's really about kind of learning, what does it mean to hold our ground and continue to hold our ground, like through colonization over all these centuries, and to come back around to like the power and importance of this land, and of holding responsibility for this land, and also continuing to like, you know, hold our ground for justice for Indigenous communities on this land, right? And if you look around, like, the land takes care of us for free all of the time, you know, like, and that's just such a beautiful thing, and such a beautiful relationship to have, to know that we can go to the land to pick those medicines and make those, and have that, you know, that autonomy to do that, and to heal our families. And so I think both of these rooms are reflective of like my experience all the time, and maybe a lot of our experience, where, you know, at the same time as we're kind of like running through life, we're like the thing that grounds us and gives us our power back and gives us our voice back. And, you know, it's like the reason why we're doing all this work is going back to that. It's like our ancestors are giving us the strength to be able to continue kind of fighting for justice for our people. So I kind of believe that we feel things before we can verbalize them. So I think that there's something more visceral about witnessing something visually than like, you know, thinking about words. But also like the sound of storytelling and like the oral, like the audio of the poems, I think is really important. And that's something like our oral history, like that has a visceral like reaction on our bodies as well, right? In the same way maybe that visual work would.